So I want you to just, think about your day today for a second. Like, really think about the micro choices you made.
Oh, like what you grabbed for breakfast or the route you drove to work.
Yeah, exactly. Who you texted, what you bought online, all of that. When you look at those little decisions, you probably feel like you're totally behind the wheel, right?
Right. You feel like a fundamentally free person making independent choices.
Exactly. But what if everything you think of as freedom is actually just a really remarkably convincing illusion?
Oh, that is a heavy question to start with.
I know, but think about it. What if the very structures that make up your life, like your bank account, your passport, maybe even the people you love, are actually the bars of a cage you don't even realize you're living inside?
It's a profoundly unsettling thought
Yes.
experiment, I mean,
Yeah.
truly. And it actually serves as the whole foundation for the, well, highly unconventional text we're exploring today.
Yeah, we have a really fascinating deep dive for you today.
We do. We are looking at a single essay titled The Road to Freedom. It was written by Zhe Feng, translated by Qin Yu, and edited by Peter. And this is dated November 10th, 2022.
And just to set the ground rules right up front, as we go through this deep dive, our goal isn't to validate this philosophy.
Right, and we're not here to debunk it either.
Exactly. We are just going to act as your guides through this incredibly radical blueprint for human society. Because, this author isn't just offering a mild critique of modern stress.
No, not at all. They are claiming to have completely solved the ancient human problem of physical and mental freedom.
And the proposed solution requires dismantling basically the absolute foundations of how we and practically every human before us have ever lived.
Yeah, the author begins with this premise that really challenges thousands of years of human history. The central argument is that humanity has been living a total lie regarding freedom.
A total lie.
Right, like we all work relentlessly our entire lives fighting for some semblance of liberty. Yet, according to this essay, absolutely no one has ever achieved it.
Which is wild. Like, not even the people we culturally view as the ultimate symbols of freedom.
Nope. The text is very explicit about the scope here. Presidents. They cannot achieve true freedom.
Wow.
Billionaires, who we assume can just, buy their way out of any restriction, they can't achieve it either. Experts, scholars, deeply devoted religious followers, none of them are truly free.
It's such a sweeping claim.
It is. And the author frames this with a very direct, provocative question for the reader. They ask, can you go where you want to, associate with the opposite sex when you want to, say whatever you want to?
And obviously, for almost every single human being on Earth, the answer to that is just a hard no.
Right, there are always restrictions, always consequences.
So how does the essay diagnose the cause of that no? Like, what is actually holding us back?
Well, the author identifies what they call the 8 factors. These are essentially 8 structural chains that universally prevent humans from getting true freedom.
Okay, 8 chains. What are they?
So the list is really fascinating because it blends these big macroeconomic structures with incredibly intimate personal relationships. The 8 chains are country, money, marriage, family, kinship, government, debt, and ego.
Okay, yeah. When I first saw that list, the first few make perfect sense from a sort of traditional anti-establishment perspective.
Yeah, complaining about taxes and borders is pretty standard.
Right. We hear people complain about governments and mortgages all the time. Being frustrated by debt is like a universal modern experience.
Absolutely.
But then you hit marriage, family, and kinship, and framing those as chains of enslavement is it's an incredibly jarring pivot.
It really is. It forces us to look at the mechanics of why the author views these seemingly positive things as traps. So let's look at marriage for a second.
Sure.
The text describes it as a, quote, special relationship between both sexes. And it states very bluntly that the moment you enter it, you should no longer expect to be free.
Because it creates a boundary around your associations and your physical movements. It's an exclusive contract. And contracts, by definition, restrict future behavior, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it goes even deeper with family. The author defines family not as this, haven of unconditional love, but as the most basic production relationship in society.
Oh, wow. So it's viewed purely as an economic and social obligation matrix.
Yes. And as long as your life revolves around maintaining that matrix, you are bound to it. The same logic applies to kinship, too. Your parents, your children, your siblings.
It's just caring for them as a chain.
Well, the argument is that These relational ties inherently dictate your physical movements and your financial obligations. Plus, they heavily burden your mental state. You're constantly worrying about them, providing for them, reacting to them.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like realizing the apps we use to organize our lives, like our calendar, our banking app, our family group chats, are actually spyware.
That's a great way to put it.
Right, like they're tracking and restricting our every move. And we keep looking for a settings tweak to make our phone run better, but the author isn't saying delete a few apps. The author is saying the operating system itself is the prison.
And the only solution is to smash the phone.
Yes, exactly. Smash the phone completely.
That really captures the totality of the author's vision here. To be free, the entire operating system of human society just has to go.
Yeah.
But the essay also acknowledges a massive psychological hurdle with this,
Which is what?
that humans rationally cannot fathom life without these factors.
Oh, for sure. Because if you actually think about smashing the phone, panic sets in immediately.
Complete panic.
Mm.
The author breaks down how our minds just immediately rebel against this concept. Like, if you tell someone to dissolve their country and government, their immediate terrified thought is, who will protect my safety?
Right, and if you tell them to abolish money, they're like, how do I acquire the goods I need to survive?
Exactly. And the relationship panic is even deeper. If you tell someone to give up their family and kinship ties, the agonizing question is, what is the point of life without my parents or my children?
Yeah, the text describes this as having 10,000 what-to-dos just flooding the mind.
It is the fear of chaos, pure and simple. We rely on these 8 factors for our identity and our survival. Emotionally, we pay too much attention to our affections, and rationally, we need a system of exchange and protection.
So we just cling to these chains.
Yes, and the author's cruel irony here is that it is precisely this clinging that ensures no one ever achieves true physical and mental freedom.
We are voluntarily holding the bars of our own cage because we're just terrified of the open space outside it.
That is exactly the argument.
I want you listening right now to really try and visualize that open space. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and your debts are completely, magically erased.
Which sounds incredible,
Sure.
honestly.
It does. But alongside that debt, your bank account is totally empty because money no longer exists. Your nationality is gone, your marriage is dissolved, and your deep, fundamental ties to your children and parents are severed.
They're just other people now.
Right. So is that the ultimate breathless liberation, or is that the most terrifying, chaotic isolation you can possibly imagine?
According to the text, we are so afraid of that isolation that we refuse to change. But that just leaves humanity in a miserable state. We're dragging around these 8 heavy chains, fully aware that we aren't completely free, but we're too terrified to take them off.
Which really begs the question, if we are stuck in this fundamentally flawed operating system, how does humanity mentally survive day to day? Like, how do we cope with the friction of the chains?
Well, the author has a very specific answer for that, and it centers heavily on religion.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because people cannot attain actual tangible freedom in reality, they turn to spiritual coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
But the text does not view this favorably at all. It basically synthesizes the role of religion as an anesthetic.
An anesthetic. So basically a painkiller for a disease it can't actually cure.
Yes, precisely. Because reality is rigidly bound by these 8 miserable factors: debt, government, family obligations. People seek spiritual comfort simply to numb their fragile, sad nerves.
So it's just a distraction.
Right. Religion allows people to endure a helpless life by clinging to the hope of some future salvation or afterlife, rather than actually dismantling the chains and achieving freedom in the here and now. It pacifies the prisoner.
Wow, that is a pretty bleak diagnosis of the human condition. We are enslaved by our money and our families, and our faith is just the medicine we take to ignore the chafing of the cuffs.
It is bleak.
But right when the essay feels like it's going to end in pure nihilism, it takes a massive handbrake turn.
Oh, it really does.
Yeah. Nothing is ever impossible which has not yet been realized or transformed by thinking.
That sentence completely changes the trajectory of the document. We move away from the grounded sociological critique of debt and family structures, and we enter something entirely different.
Because the author claims to have actually found the solution to this human trap, right? And they didn't find it through academic theory?
No, they definitely did not. The text states that the author managed to enter, quote, 20 worlds in the realm of time and space.
Wait, like parallel universes?
Basically, it describes these worlds as being superimposed, intersected, and interconnected. but with clear boundaries.
It is such a staggering narrative shift. The author is claiming this metaphysical or maybe multidimensional traversal.
Yes, they explored these superimposed space-time realms, and during these travels made a profound discovery that serves as the literal blueprint for their entire philosophy.
I have to admit, when I first read this part, it felt like trying to solve a city's terrible traffic problem. And instead of the urban planner proposing like a new subway line or a toll road, they say, oh, I pulled new architectural blueprints from a parallel dimension.
That's a great analogy.
We just vaulted from sociology straight into science fiction or mysticism.
It is a massive leap, but I will say the author treats this blueprint very seriously. Specifically, they claim to have discovered a place called the Thousand-Year World.
The Thousand-Year World, okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
According to the text, out of all these 20 superimposed realms, this is the one closest to human life.
Hmm.
And the defining characteristic of this thousand-year world is the total absence of those 8 factors.
So no country, no money, no marriage, no family, no kinship.
Exactly. But it isn't the terrifying, chaotic wasteland we imagined earlier.
Really? How so?
Well, the author reports that the beings living in this thousand-year world have an incredibly beautiful life. They have achieved exactly what has eluded humanity for thousands of years. Complete freedom of body and mind.
And they achieved it specifically because they operate without those chains?
Yes.
Okay, but how? Like, practically speaking, if you strip away money and family, what is the actual mechanism of a functioning society? How do people eat if there is no currency to exchange for food?
Right, that's the big question.
And who raises the children if the concept of family and kinship is abolished?
So, the text implies a complete reimagining of production and relationship. If family is the, quote, basic production relationship of our world, meaning we hoard resources to protect our specific kin, then removing it means resources are no longer hoarded by individual units.
Ah, okay.
The thousand-year world operates on a model where private ownership and exclusive relationships are totally dissolved. Without the ego demanding this is mine or this is my child, the anxiety of providing for a closed loop just vanishes.
So it's sort of the ultimate communal existence.
Exactly.
But this raises the biggest question of this entire deep dive for me. It is one thing to have a mystical vision of a flawless, pain-free parallel universe, right? Sure. It is entirely another to translate that into physical reality on Earth. You can't just mandate that 8 billion people suddenly drop their egos and share everything like they live in the thousand-year world.
And the author is keenly aware of that gap between theory and reality. They understand that for this to be taken seriously, it requires empirical evidence.
So they didn't just write a philosophical treatise about this parallel realm.
No, they claim to have actively copied its life mode and brought it down to Earth, creating a brand new production and life model.
Which they call this earthly prototype the second home.
Yes, the second home. And this is where the text anchors itself back into tangible, measurable data. The author states that the second home is a living, breathing community model.
Yeah.
And they present a very specific track record. They say this life mode has been running for 13 years, having started in April 2009.
Wow, 13 years is not a brief weekend retreat. That is a serious long-term experiment in human behavior.
It really is.
Asking people to voluntarily give up their money, dismantle their traditional family structures, and surrender their ego for over a decade is massive. And doesn't the essay provide a really specific statistic about this?
It does. It claims that 95% of the participants who have lived this way have been happy with it.
95%.
Yep. And the author uses this 95% success rate as the ultimate proof of concept. They argue that this data dismantles our rational fears.
Oh, I see.
It proves that human beings can survive and actually thrive in the highest realm of freedom and happiness.
Yeah.
Even when the foundational pillars of country, marriage, and family completely disappear.
Okay, I really have to push back on that logic, though, or at least view it through a highly critical lens for a moment.
Fair enough.
Is a 95% happiness rate in a single specific community actually proof that this model works for the entire planet? Because to me, it sounds a lot like an extreme lifestyle trend.
How do you mean?
Well, think about people who sell all their worldly possessions to live off the grid in a converted van. If you survey that specific community, you might find a 95% happiness rate because it's a highly motivated, self-selected group of people who desperately wanted to live in a van,
Right, they chose that life.
Exactly. But if you instituted a global mandate forcing all 8 billion people on Earth to abandon their homes and live in vans, you are absolutely not going to get a 95% happiness rate. Scaling a radical voluntary lifestyle into a global baseline is a totally different experiment.
That is a very good point. Self-selection bias is definitely the most obvious vulnerability in the data, and it is a completely valid critique.
Yeah.
But interestingly, the author attempts to preempt this exact skepticism.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the text explicitly raises the question, can the partial success prove that the second home model works in the world?
So how do they justify that massive leap from a localized, self-selected community to a universal human solution?
By relying on a massive global audit of human sociology. To prove that the second home model has universal viability, the author lists an incredibly extensive travel and research resume.
Trying to show it's not just a fluke.
Right. They are trying to show that this model aligns with human nature across all cultures. The text details that the author has lived in Asia for decades, spent more than 10 years in Africa, and lived in America for more than 5 years.
And they didn't just stay in major cities either. The essay specifically mentions spending months living alongside indigenous tribes in Australia.
Yes, and that inclusion is vital to their argument. By studying indigenous communities, the author is likely observing groups that already operate outside the rigid, modern confines of the 8 factors.
Right, communities that might prioritize collective resource sharing over individual wealth, or communal child rearing over strict nuclear families.
Exactly. It serves as historical and cultural proof that the second home principles aren't alien to humanity.
And the research isn't just historical, it goes right up to the modern day.
Correct. In the 5 years prior to the essay's publication, the author claims to have been in close contact with more than 2,000 people from Europe to gauge their mentalities.
Wow, that's a lot of interviews.
Furthermore, they cite deep, immersive exchanges with the Konohana family in Japan, as well as visits to 2 specific communities in Canada.
Oh, the Konohana family is a really fascinating reference point. It's an existing agricultural community in Japan known for its highly communal, spiritually driven lifestyle where resources are fully shared.
Right.
So by referencing them, the author is basically pointing to other places on Earth and saying, look, fragments of the thousand-year world are already working here too.
Exactly. The author is aggregating all these global observations, from African nations to Australian indigenous tribes to intentional communities in Japan and Canada, and synthesizing them into one uncompromising conclusion.
Which is?
Based on decades of observing how humans operate both inside and outside the 8 chains, their ultimate feeling is that the second home mode works universally.
They don't leave any room for ambiguity either. The text states with total conviction that unless nature intervenes and eliminates human beings entirely, the second home model is the inevitable future of production and life.
The inevitable future. Yeah, it is not presented as a quirky, alternative lifestyle for a select few. The author argues it is the only road to freedom for the human race.
Man. So as we wrap up this exploration, I want to turn the spotlight back onto you listening to this. Think about your life right now. Could you actually do it?
That's a huge question.
If someone could genuinely guarantee you a place in that 95%, if they promised you absolute physical and mental freedom and a beautiful, happy life in this second home, would you make the trade?
Could you really empty your bank account? Dissolve your marriage, walk away from your nationality?
And view your children not as yours, but just as members of the collective? Could you let go of your ego?
It is the ultimate test of what we value more, our comfort or our freedom. The author is asking us to believe that the things we deeply feel make us human, our personal loves, our specific lineages, the homes we build, are actually the exact things preventing us from reaching our ultimate potential.
It requires the total severing of the conventional human experience.
It does.
It is an incredibly heavy concept to process. Just to retrace our steps for a second. We started with the author's diagnosis that despite all our technological and social advancements, we are fundamentally unfree, bound by 8 chains like money, family, and government.
Right. We then explored how society uses religion as a numbing agent to cope with the pain of those chains.
Which led to the radical pivot where the author claimed to access the superimposed thousand-year world, discovering a blueprint for a society free of these 8 factors.
And finally, we examined how that mystical blueprint was translated into the second home here on Earth, boasting a 13-year track record and claiming global viability based on the author's extensive, decades-long sociological travels.
When you look at the architecture of this whole argument, it really is a fascinating diagnosis of modern anxiety. We all feel the weight of modern obligations.
We do. But the proposed solution, total structural collapse and ego death, leaves us with a profound philosophical puzzle. And it's something the text circles around but doesn't explicitly answer.
Oh, those are always the best kind of puzzles. What's the lingering question here?
If the only way to achieve ultimate perfect freedom requires you to abandon absolutely everything that constructs your current identity, your family, your nationality, your personal wealth, and even your internal ego, then when that perfect freedom is finally achieved, is the entity experiencing it still you?
Oh, wow.
Or, in order to become truly free, do we actually have to evolve into a completely different species entirely?
That is, if you systematically remove every single chain, does the prisoner just disappear along with them? That is a haunting thought.
It really makes you think.
So the next time you make one of those micro decisions today, checking your balance, texting a family member, looking at your passport, just ask yourself, are you driving the car or is the road driving you? Thank you so much for exploring this deep dive with us. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep looking for those invisible chains, and we'll catch you next time.